Hello, everybody. Okay, so I think this is going to be a kind of quick rim workshop. I got this Fanatec formula rim. It's really pretty nice. I upgraded it with the Asher Racing paddle shifters, which I highly recommend. They feel great, they work great, they're spectacular. But I'm using the formula rim with my OSW base. And so I needed to do a USB conversion. So what I first got was the Leo Bodnar standalone USB PCB conversion. It's a solderless kit. You basically disassemble the rim, disconnect the original Fanatec connector that goes through its quick release, and use this little cable jumper to attach the PCB interface, which has USB input, and it connects to your computer and exposes the rim as a USB device. So it works, but there was one problem that I had, and that's with the funky switch that the rim has. There's this little rotary encoder. It's a multi-use button. You can use it as a D-pad, up, down, left, right. You can turn it, you can press it. So all the buttons, the shifters, the buttons, the digital display, everything works fine with the Bodnar interface except for the rotary encoder. It was really hit and miss as far as whether it would register any of the clicks or not. And trying to use it in practice was really frustrating, either using it to have the black box display change or using it, God forbid, for like brake bias. Is just really inconsistent. You could turn it slowly, turn it fast, didn't really seem to make a difference. It wouldn't register consistently. It was not one-to-one. And the encoder has a really nice feel as far as like how many clicks it gives per rotation. So it feels like it should be very precise, but in practice it wasn't. So what I ended up doing was switching to a sim racing machine's USB conversion, which is what's attached to the rim now. And that's a single standalone teensy Arduino-based adapter. And it's sort of inside this interface that goes between the rim with the 52 millimeter Fanatec connector. And in my case, I'm using a 70 millimeter Q1R quick release. So the actual PC board is inside the adapter, has a really heavy duty USB cable that's included, and has a similar connector on the inside that goes onto the board on the Fanatec rim. So let me show you, since we have the Sim Racing's machines adapter attached, how things behave. So if we look at, and this is the actual device, this is the Sim Racing Machines wheel side quick release. So there's a little board. There's how the USB connects to it. In my case, I'm using the 52 millimeter for Fanatec and 70 millimeter for the Q1R. That's where it is. So if we pull up like the joystick control panel, and I connect the rim. So when you're using the Sim Racing's machine adapter, it comes up as a Club Sport wheel and actually does present as the Club Sport wheel base to the Fanatec software. And it also works so that you can use the Fanatec shift indicator option within iRacing, and then all the LEDs and stuff work for the shift display without running any external software like the Fanaleds or other stuff. So if we look at the properties for the joystick, or for the They have it set so that the little analog stick moves those axes. All the buttons and stuff show up, whatever their numerical assignments are. In this case, they have the rotary encoder on buttons, looks like 17 and 18. And looking here in the joystick properties page, it sometimes looks like it's not registering. But if I do it slowly, it pretty much always shows the register click. And there's another application that was suggested to use to sort of troubleshoot this, which is called DL View. I think it's actually a Logitech product, but it provides a little bit more verbose output. And we can see, looking there, it shows the timing and the status of the buttons. So every click that I give it registers and shows up as either a button. In this case, it's 16 or 17, but that's because it's 0 based and the joystick control panel is 1 based and 17 and 18. But it works great. The rotary encoder, every click I give it works through fine. All the other buttons work, so it's great. I like the Sim Racing's machine interface. But Leo Bodnar responded and did an update to the firmware on his board. So what I want to do in this rig workshop is to experiment with that and see if it resolves the issue or not. So right now, I just have one of the screws that basically holds the rim together. Normally you have all 4 of these connected. Right now I've only got one. So take that out and we'll swap the boards. Disconnect the USB and see how it goes. I'm optimistic that it actually works much better now and that Leo fixed the problem, but we'll see. Oops. Okay, so now the back of the rim is no longer bolted down. We can open it up. Inside you can see where the interface to the Fanatec rim PC board is. On the inside there is the Sim Racing's machine adapter. So when disconnecting this for the very first time, I had to use a hairdryer to soften some hot glue-ish adhesive that Fanatec had put on here. And that did leave a little bit of residue and stuff on the PC board. So on the webcam, it might look a little smudged, but in practice, I don't think it causes any sort of problem. Okay, so now we have the Sim Racing's machine board disconnected. And we'll put on the wire for Leo's adapter. And when dealing with these connectors, I try really hard to press on the plastic on the connector interface rather than pulling or pushing on the wires. My experience over the long term has been that kind of thing can definitely result in loose connections in the long term. So you really want to press and pull on the plastic rather than the wire. So anyway, Leo's board is now connected to the rim. And we can connect it to the PC. Hello. Hello, people on the internet. Hello. My 11-year-old, everybody. Okay, good luck. Okay. Tell Mom to text me if she needs anything or if I can help. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. Goodbye, Internet. Thanks, sweetie. What? Okay. Okay, so now Leo's board is connected, and let's go. I'll show you what the existing behavior is and how that looks. So I think DLView often gets confused when I change devices, but the joystick control panel now shows the formula rim instead of Club Sport wheel. So it identifies itself to the PC differently. And like I said, the Sim Racing's machine interface does cooperate with all the Fanatec driver stuff and emulates the wheelbase. So if we click on the properties, the way this one's set up, the analog stick moves the slider and dial, but it doesn't really matter. And all the other inputs show up properly. And now if we rotate, oh hey Dave, if we rotate the rotary encoder, it does not reliably click, like at all. So it's like I can do 4 or 5 clicks before a single responds, and like that. And it doesn't really matter if I do it quickly or slowly. The response just isn't there. So if we take a look at it with the DLView instead, it's showing up in this little window. So here, I'm not sure if you can hear the clicks on the webcam microphone, but you might get 1 out of 5 or so. And sometimes it goes for a sequence where it responds really well, but then doesn't. So this was my main frustration with the Leo Bodnar solution. But like I said, Leo has responded and apparently updated the firmware for it. So let's take a look and see if the firmware update actually improves the situation. So on this is the information that he has for the Fanatec RIM standalone PCB. I know it's a cheap rotary encoder, but it should work. And it does work fine with the Sim Racing's machine interface. So let's go and see whether the update really helps. So in here we have product downloads, and it says there's a firmware update. So on this page, the instructions talk about installing the bootloader and stuff. So I haven't done that, but I have downloaded it. And let's go set that up. So set up HID Flash version 1.0. Give it permission. I don't think I need a start menu, but I'll let it go to the desktop for now. Sure, install it. Okay, and we'll launch right away. Okay, so this has identified the formula RIM, Leo Bodnar. It says it's version 2.2 right now. Hopefully revealing my serial number on the internet isn't a problem. So let's just take a look at the instructions and make sure there's nothing unusual that I need to do. So open the HID Flash program by double-clicking the icon. Device plugged in, it should be recognized in the software like so, which it is. If you have multiple devices, we don't. So step 1, click the bootloader. This will set the device into the bootloader mode, which means it's ready to accept the new firmware. Okay, so bootloader. Okay, it now shows as bootloader. Step 2. Click the Browse File Located Firmware file for your device. Select the file option Open. Okay, so Leo actually has provided 2 different versions. One's buffered and one's unbuffered. I think he says the buffered one buffers all the clicks and then applies them when you stop. and the unbuffered stops applying them as soon as you stop rotating the button. So we'll try with the buffered version first, I think. So browse file, and I have them in downloads. We'll do the buffered first. Okay, so I've browsed file. Step 3, click flash firmware. The green progress bar will move from left to the right firmware you selected, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So after that, if the device is still recognized as boot or bootloader, the firmware update failed. This is normally caused by selecting the wrong firmware from your device. Please ensure that you selected the correct thing. Okay, so let's see what happens. Flash firmware. You guys ready? Finished. Device will now reboot. Okay. Now it says it's a Leo Bodnar Formula M version 2.3.1 or 2.31. So awesome. So let me close that just in case there's any device conflict. And let's go back to first look at just the joystick CPL, see how that feels. Okay, so now it still shows up as Formula M, that's fine. Properties, analog still works, general buttons and stuff still work, directional input on the funky switch works. Oh, look at that. And interesting, yeah, it's the buffering, so like if I click it a bunch of times and then stop, it continues to apply until it's done all of the clicks. So that is a fundamental difference in just tactile behavior than the Sim Racing's machine, because I think theirs is unbuffered and stops as soon as you stop rotating it. Interesting. Okay, but it feels way better. Let's take a look at the DL view output and see if that also shows with higher fidelity. So it's this little window. Yeah, that is interesting as far as spinning it and having it continue to provide the input till it's done every single one. Not sure how I feel about that. Let's take a look. Let's try reflashing it now and see how the unbuffered feels. So let me close all these guys. Go back to the firmware flash. Oops. Don't want to run the installer again. I want to run the actual thing. So it did make a desktop icon for me. So let's just look at that. There we go. Okay, so bootloader. Okay. Browse for files. So this was the buffered. We'll try the non-buffered. And then flash firmware. And it's just as easy as that. So it's Formula M 2.32. Close that. Back to joystick control panel. Okay, so here in the joystick control panel properties, and there it is with way higher fidelity than it did before the firmware update, and it stops as soon as you stop turning the wheel, or turning the encoder, which I think in practice is what I would prefer. But let's take a look at the DL view as well. Okay. Way better than before. Stops as soon as you stop turning. But if you turn slowly and give it a specific number of inputs, it's right on. And if I turn it pretty fast, they scroll as long as I turn and stop as soon as I stop. So I think that's the tactile behavior I would prefer, rather than buffering the inputs and getting the specific number of clicks, especially when turning it quickly. So awesome. Hats off, and thank you to Leo Bodnar for the firmware update for the rim. And like that. Yeah, so here's the information on Leo's site. The PCB board itself is under the race simulator specific products. It's the Fanatec rim standalone USB PCB. Costs 50 pounds. It's pretty straightforward to install. You do have to disassemble the rim. The most sort of nerve-wracking part, I think, was using the hairdryer and stuff to loosen the hot glue that they installed it with. But the instructions that he provides are super clear. Mine was black as far as the hot glue stuff, but it seems like it's pretty much the same. The installation of the board. One thing I did have to do was change the position of this, since I used the Asher shifter update, or shifter upgrade, I guess. For me, I had to position the I had to mount the board in the center, because the way the supports and stuff for the shifters go, it would actually crush the board if it was mounted on the side like it's shown in the directions. So I had to use a few extra strips of double-sided tape to move up the mounting surface and get it so that it was here in the center, but that seemed to work just fine. So yeah, the rest of the instructions and everything else for the board are really straightforward. You get it physically installed. Do the wiring. Mount everything so that it's nice and secure. And you're pretty much good to go. So one fundamental difference, I guess, that does still remain is that, and I guess I'll experiment with this just to make sure that it's absolutely still the case, is that with the Bodnar, you have to run Fanatec if you want the digital display to show the shift indicators and stuff, whereas the Sim Racing's machine board identifies, I think, more natively as the wheel base, and you can use the option within iRacing to enable the shift indicator without running any external software. So that's still, I guess, one difference. With the Leo board, I did also have to get a different adapter for the quick release. On Leo's shop, he sells a 50 millimeter, I think. Let's take a look. So yeah, he sells a Fanatec rim adapter, but it's 50 millimeters, or 50.8 and 52 for that kind of a quick release. But the Q1R that I already had was 70 millimeters. So I got this pretty nice aluminum adapter. So it's 52 millimeters on the inside and 70 millimeters on the outside. Mount that to the rim, mount the other side to the quick release, and you're good to go. With the Sim Racing one, it's all part of the same unified package. So either way, and they do provide options in the Sim Racing one for which kind of quick release you'll be using. So if you do have a 50 millimeter, they'll support that, or 70 millimeter, etc. So great. Well, once again, hats off to Leo for updating the firmware and getting it so that the rotary encoder works. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I think I'll put it back together and do some racing. So thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy, drive safe, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.